Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it is time for a review of the new Young Fathers LP, Dead. Before we get too deep into this album, as I know a lot of you like to do, you like to point out as soon as there's some kind of significant major change or alteration in anything that occurs in these videos on a regular basis, and let's just get out of the way now, yes, Cal Chuchesta is wearing a backwards baseball cap. It's not a big deal. Who cares? These guys are an eclectic hip-hop trio that hail from Scotland. I first stumbled upon their sound in early 2012, just a few months after they dropped their debut mixtape EP album, Tape 1, that was released late 2011. On this tape, African music, reggae, and lo-fi electronics all mixed together into this really soulful and gritty take on hip-hop music. They followed this release up with a signing to ANTICON Records. They dropped the sequel to Tape 1, Tape 2 last year. Musically, sonically, it was really a continuation of a lot of what was going on with Tape 1, except maybe the ballads on this tape were a little bit more beautiful, soulful, like the opener on this thing, and there were more explosive tracks on here too, like Queen is Dead. My only major issue with these tapes is that they were sort of brief. I thought Young Fathers were writing really fantastically catchy songs, but I also couldn't help but feel like they were sort of holding back in terms of the length of their overall projects, holding back from something with just a bit more runtime and a lot more ambition. I also suspected that coming out with music on ANTICON Records would mean that future releases would be a little bit more well recorded too. And on this latest LP of theirs, Young Fathers pretty much show improvements on all of these fronts. Once the first single from this LP dropped, Low, I was incredibly excited to hear where Young Fathers would move next. This song's got a beautiful intro, really poetic lyrics, great singing. To me, Young Fathers is one of the best groups out there that makes hip-hop music that also features this much good, passionate, soulful singing. And once the beat to this track kicks in and builds, it sounds more like a parade of drummers than it does any sort of traditional hip-hop beat that's produced on a laptop or a sampler. And the vocal harmonies on this song and other songs on here too sound much more concise, well put together, really cleaned up nicely. Young Fathers hit the nail on the head every time when it comes to this group singing or chanting that they do on their tracks. There's loads of off-kilter and sort of quirky and noisy synths on this record too, as well as weird, colorful sound effects that hang in the background, sort of a noisy ambience to either the drums or the vocals. I feel like Young Fathers did a great job of advancing their sound, improving it, making it sound nicer, while carrying over most of the characteristics from their previous tapes. All of that being said, why is it that I'm not in love with this album? Why is it not that I'm completely head over heels for it? Because I'm not, honestly. For me, it comes down to two things. One, the instrumentals on this LP are some of the most redundant and repetitive that Young Fathers have put together so far. And some of the songs on this record, I think, are some of the most lackluster that they've put out too. The instrumentals on this LP show very little change from the beginning to the end of the track. The really quirky keyboards and primal drums that made Tape 1 and Tape 2 so great go really stale really quickly as they repeat the same phrases over and over and over and over across verses and choruses that don't really have that much contrast from one another. This happens on numerous tracks: Paying, I've Arrived, Hangman, Just Another Bullet, and even the song Get Up, which is easily the catchiest track on this entire LP, but even the really infectious chorus doesn't draw away from the fact that the rhythm section feels so redundant. This is actually a difficult thing for me to come to terms with when listening to this record, because this is the last thing that I thought I would feel while listening to the tracks on Dead. Given that the recording quality on Dead is better than that of the last two tapes, I would only assume that it would be easier for Young Fathers to write more dynamic songs with very subtle lows and explosive highs. But it just doesn't happen. There are plenty of tracks on this LP where the vocals feel particularly beautiful or intense, like the screaming on the track Paying, or the really soulful singing on the song Dip. But instrumentally, Dead feels way too mid-paced and too mild to be as exciting as anything Young Fathers have done so far. I think the only visceral spot for me on this entire LP was the opening track, No Way, with the hammering kick drums at the very end of the song. And like I said before, I do think there are some songs on here that are sort of lacking as well. The song Am I Not Your Boy? A beautiful tune, really great ballad on here, but a song that I think really could have done with a climax. There's the song Get Up that I already mentioned, that while it is the catchiest song on the entire LP, maybe because the refrain is repeated so liberally, but lyrically it's not really one of the more gripping songs that Young Fathers have pulled together. There's only one real track on here that I outright disliked and really let me down, and that's a song that moves into really strange sonic territory with an abstract song structure and is really spacious and just does not end up engaging because of that. You know, a majority of the songs on here aren't terrible, but they just don't go that step further to really wow me. There are some songs on here, though, where I really do love the lyrical imagery, like on Dip and No Way, and especially Low. Did I see you planting seeds in the forest? Is it for the green or the dollars? Now don't go telling me it's for the needs of the poorest. Now I'm gonna take a shit in your palace. The imagery on the song War is really vivid as well, and Am I Not Your Boy is a sort of interesting song that seems to be written with a mother in mind, and it's sort of confessional in a way, telling her that the boy that you once were is dead now. Many of the songs do have gripping, nice characteristics, and I think Young Fathers have maintained their personality over the course of making this album as well. I mean, there aren't any groups out there that I can really name that have a sound quite like Young Fathers. But the biggest hindrance to this LP is that there's just not a lot of variation to these songs. The better sound and the better singing on this LP do balance out what I don't like about it in a sense, but really Dead is a step down for me in terms of memorability and enjoyability. I'm feeling a light to decent 6 on this thing. Transition. If you've given this LP a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why did you feel either of those? And what should I review next? Young Fathers, Dead, Forever.